Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Last year, two of America's largest railroads announced intentions to merge in a move that could have big impacts on agricultural shipping. But last week, that potential merger hit a roadblock. Joining us now with the details is Mike Steenhoek, the executive director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. Mike, who was going to merge and what happened last week with the Surface Transportation Board?
Well, two of America's largest railroads, the Union Pacific Railroad and the Norfolk Southern, which Union Pacific is mostly a western railroad, Norfolk Southern mainly an eastern railroad, they announced their intentions to merge last year. And that unleashed a pretty lengthy process. And one of the elements of that whole process is to submit an application to a government agency called the U.S. Surface Transportation Board. That's the agency that will approve or reject any kind of merger or acquisition or consolidation within the rail industry. And what the Surface Transportation Board ruled on January 16th was that the application was incomplete. And so they rejected it. And they're giving the applicants, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern, time to amend that application and resubmit it. And basically what the Surface Transportation Board said, it's not a rejection of the merger itself. It's just a rejection of the application. Because what the Surface Transportation Board said is there are so many implications of this. This is such a considerable transaction that we need more information to really help us do our job, to make a wise decision, including things like how will it enhance competition? What will be the impact on the public interest? So some of those things that they just need more information. The Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern will resubmit that application. So basically what this did is just kind of push the process back.
All right, so with this process back, we do expect it to continue moving forward. They'd create nearly a $40 billion railroad. Mike, from your perspective in the soy industry, what are the concerns or opportunities that could come from a massive merger like this one in rail?
Well, I'm hearing perspectives on both sides from agricultural shippers. Those who support it, they like the prospect of having more seamless rail service from one area of the country to the next. So if you're a company, an ag shipper that has most of your assets located in west of the Mississippi River, they like the prospect of having more seamless service to eastern markets, including ports on the East Coast. So having just more redundancy to your options. On the other side, there are those agricultural shippers who are really concerned about having fewer transportation providers competing for your business. That's something that clearly is good for us, is when you have as many transportation providers competing for your business. Now all of a sudden there's the prospect of having one less competitor for that business, and that could result in higher railroad freight rates, a decrease in service. So there's a lot of concerns on the prospect of that merger as well. So you're hearing both sides.
All right, we'll continue to watch that as we go forward. Mike, of course, you watch transportation across the country. We're seeing a warm up now out of the deep freeze. Is that helping return some efficiency to the transportation network?
It's certainly helping, but one of the things that we clearly are just reminded of is that cold weather, ice, snow, it can really have a negative impact on the efficiency of our supply chain with barge, with rail, obviously with trucking. And so that's certainly something that we're coming back from. And so we're looking for some degree of normalcy to be returned.
Farmers and shippers would all love to see that normalcy come back after this cold snap. Mike Steenhoek, Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Fight grease, dust, and contaminants on your equipment with a Hot Sea pressure washer. Visit hotsea.com to find a local dealer, and remember, nothing cleans like a Hot Sea. This week, we're going to turn our focus to the livestock markets. Dave Weber, Senior Protein Analyst with Terrain, joins us now. And Dave, we continue to see volatility here in cattle. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having us again.
Look
forward to the discussion, Mike.
Absolutely. Let's talk about last Friday's cattle on feed report. We did see those placements come in 5% lower. How did that compare to what the trade was anticipating?
Pretty close. It was almost on the surveyed analyst guesses. But the interesting part's the big disparity north versus south. We continue to see tightening placements. Texas and Colorado were down almost 20% year over year apiece. There was some compared to the 5-year average. Now, if we look at Texas year over year, up 10%, but that's compared to last year's big decline after the border closure with Mexico. So I think it takes a little perspective. Yeah, we're up 10% year over year, down 20% compared to the 5-year average for Texas, down almost 20% for Colorado as well compared to the 5-year average. So a little contextual trade. You had to read a little deeper into the report to get all the meaning out of it. Still see pretty big declines year over year on cattle on feed totals as a result of that continuing trend. Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota continue to show the bulk of the year over year increases in cattle on feed, where the South is starting to empty out.
Let's talk carcass weights, Dave. We've got this declining number of cattle in those feedlots around the country, but corn, sheep, are we continuing to just put pounds on these animals?
Yeah, we've got a couple of compounding factors there. Really, from a feed yard math perspective, those cattle that are in the yard are probably the best choice you could have versus spending money on the high replacement costs. We've seen dwindling capacity in some of the yards, so they've got room and no cattle coming, so they've got some room to put some extra days on cattle. And with cost of gain versus value of gain, they're still trying to cheapen those cattle up, trying to get break evens back in line.
Getting those break evens back in line, and of course, looking ahead to eventual growth of this herd. Dave, we saw the heifer retention number come in at about 39% on this most recent cattle on feed. Does that tell you that we're holding those heifers back, or are we still sending them off to the feedlot?
Well, it's interesting that it on kind of to your point, the viewpoint is that we've been retaining some heifers. Daryl Peel from Oklahoma State had an interesting article this last week. If you look at the decline in heifers during the last year, about 140,000 head decline, 145,000 of that was the decline in heifer imports of spayed heifers from Mexico. So that tells me domestically we're still using heifers at a rapid pace. Yeah, there's debate on the adjustments for the beef on dairy component, those kind of things. But if you just look at the top line year over year change and what we did with the lack of imports from Mexico, I think that tells a pretty good story that if there's heifer retention, it's small. And as we look forward to the inventory report on Friday, we could see some kind of flat kind of numbers, I think.
Now that we do have this cattle on feed report behind us, the trade was moderately stronger here this week. Dave, going forward, does this support stronger live cattle prices?
I think it does. I think as we move into the spring market, the January, February beef demand, packer margin battle back and forth. We've got these high break evens coming at us. I think cattle feeders get on the fight, so we'll probably see prices grind higher as we get into the spring. I think a lot of the trade, and particularly cattle feeders, are pretty excited about where we got the year started at, these kind of low 230 kind of territory, and we'll probably grind higher. I think that 240 mark for February is kind of a threshold. We got to kind of work our way through that. We'll probably spend quite a few weeks in that 238 to maybe 242 kind of territory before we get enough better demand as we work into March and April to accelerate out of there. And as we look at going into the spring market, we all forget that the seasonality of availability has changed with these extra days on feed. So instead of the peak number and the calves coming in June like we're used to, that's probably more of an August kind of number. So that gives us some space in that kind of May, June, July window, probably to see some higher cattle prices. A market that looks a lot like last year's kind of contra-seasonal kind of trade, and probably gives us an opportunity to get in that kind of high 250s, maybe into the 260 territory out there in peak demand. The other thing that we've got is we look at the one thing left in the cattle on feed report is when you stratify the placements by weight group to convert that into when they're coming out of the yards, those February, March, April placed against is what I call them, or expected marketings for those months, could be down 10%. It's probably in that 8 to 10% range. So we're going to get tight quick, and then we're going to stay tight as we go into the summer.
All right. Well, cattle feeders would like to see that move higher. We'll be back with more from Dave Weber of Terrain. Fight grease, dust, and contaminants on your equipment with a Hotsy pressure washer. Visit Hotsy.com to find a local dealer, and remember, nothing cleans like a Hotsy. We're talking with Dave Weber, Senior Animal Protein Analyst with Terrain this week. And Dave, you mentioned that cattle inventory report out from the USDA. What was the trade anticipating to see in those figures?
So we were thinking the trade group's beef cow numbers up about 0.4%. I think it was the analyst average. Um, that's pretty close in line with our expectations. If we take the January 1 inventory report at face value, expecting maybe there's a surprise and some revisions, kind of like what we saw in the July report. So that number could move around probably somewhere between up a half to maybe up 1.5, depending on those revisions. On the beef replacement heifer side, looking for maybe 1 to 2% increase in beef replacement heifers. And we got to remember that's two heifer crops, right? There's heifer calves and the heifers we bred during 2025, which I think that number is probably the heifers bred last year, even to up just a touch. Most of the growth is going to be coming in the heifer calf number. The other heifer calf category down 2%. So those are those heifers that are on feed that we've discussed.
All right. Dave, let's look out through 2026. We've got this incredibly high-priced beef at retail. Is this supporting pork and chicken? Are we seeing consumers shift to pork and chicken? What's your read on the meat industry as a whole?
The beef demand picture remains robust. We saw continued growth through our retail real per capita expenditure data through October. Looks pretty good. We're still waiting on some of that trade data to get caught up for November, December, but expecting continued growth there. We'll probably be up about 5% year over year on a real deflated spending, which will be record large. So that's a great story for the beef industry. It doesn't matter how you measure it on the all fresh retail beef price or choice, continued strong growth there. On the chicken side, about even for the year. I think I've got them up about 0.1% year over year and about a 2% decline on pork spending. So those guys are continuing to struggle. I know you hear a lot of meat industry executives talk about, while beef might be a headwind, it's also kind of dragging the others along. Kind of true. Going into the summer, we saw boneless, skinless chicken breasts on the USDA reports move towards $3. We're back to $1.50 today. So whatever strength was there just kind of ran out of gas, and they're back to struggling a little bit. It's a seasonally slower time, November, December. So we've got to anticipate, kind of see what we get in January here.
We'll be watching. Dave Weber, Senior Animal Protein Analyst with Terrain. Thanks for joining us this week.
You bet, Mike. Thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg, I know it was quiet last week in the Pacific Northwest. Does that change at all this week?
Very little change in the weather pattern across the West, and for outdoor work and livestock operations and the usual stuff on the homestead and the farmstead, great weather. Not great. The snowpack, the snow cover across the Cascades and more so southward into the Sierra and more so eastward into the central and southern Rockies. Some of these moisture totals, the water equivalency of the snow on the peaks, which are quite high for the time of year, not even 50% of normal, less than 10 inches in the Sierra in particular. So we've got some work to do, but little change expected. Most of the action, and even here the cold and the bitter cold is moderating, but still kind of a plethora of weather systems on the move. No big winder-uppers for now, just some dashes of snow shower and flurry activity. The chill is normal and typical for Montana at this point, and by the way, just about and welcome to February. Farther downstream, pretty quiet weather pattern, a return to more seasonal temperatures in some of these colder areas of the northern and central plains. We have at least expanded the snow cover across the plains and Corn Belt, now 50 to 55% across the nation. Little change along the divide and westward, maybe some early morning low clouds, fog, and frost, and that is it. Maybe towards the following weekend, a little moisture moving ashore. And kind of a boundary setting up here across parts of the western sections of Texas, the high plains areas, and certainly cleanup, recovery, and assessment still going on from the winter storm a week to 10 days ago, but nothing coming out of the plains winter storm-wise, nothing across the west with regard to significant winter precip, maybe a little offshore Santa Ana wind flow there. The warmth continues on, no snow across the Sierra expected this week, and a nice recovery on temperatures, hardly a snowflake or a sprinkle in the air onto the central and southern plains as the week wears on.
Now, any chance for a warm-up for those folks in the northern plains next week?
I would put it in terms of maybe a moderation of the cold. I hate that term, warmer, when you get out of the single digits and teens and you still have sub-zero wind chill because the south wind is blowing at 30 miles an hour. It's all relative, I guess. A little weak clipper system, a little dash of snow shower flurry activity across at least the central plains, across the Corn Belt locales. It's cold, but more or less a more moderate brand of cold, not the stuff down to 25, 30, and 35 below zero. And another little system making its way across the Great Plains into the Corn Belt locales more and more. Arctic air to the north, warmth down south. This will become more of a storm track here as we get deeper on into the month of February and March. So we're not done with these winter storms by any means. And the same applies to the deep south and southeastern states and along areas of West Texas, cotton in through areas of the Delta region. Temperatures have recovered, by the way, from the frost and freeze all the way down into the Rio Grande last week. And this is just sprinkle and snowflake stuff if it happens at all. Most of the action will get going as you get into the Mississippi Valley and eastward with time. Another round of some rainfall, milder air, but I'm sure that power grid system there, Mike, across parts of the Delta, Louisiana, Mississippi, is still suspect coming off the winter storm a couple of weeks ago.
Well, speaking of active winter weather, anything to watch for on the eastern third of the country this next week?
Kind of the back end of this winter storm. Hopefully, Max got the snowblower going for Mrs. Armstrong in the Carolinas. That system will have been blown out to sea and up across the parts of the northeast of New England. And we bring down a little chug of some cold air, modified Arctic air, some snow showers and flurries. No big deal on the cold for a change. Below average temperatures, but a better feel for outdoor work across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes areas. And the lake snowbelts have been pretty active. By the way, wide open waters across Lake Michigan and the rest of the lakes region, except for Lake Erie, now completely frozen over, so that should wind down some of these lake effect snow events across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and parts of western New York State. But the wind and the cold on the last of that East Coast storm into the northeast of New England early in the week. Later in the week, again, a little weak clipper system on the move, a dash of snow shower and flurry activity, and this will be the storm track with cold air to the north, milder air down south, and it'll be a busy one going forward into February across the plains and Corn Belt locales. Another round of frost and freeze, and into the Florida Panhandle last week, low to mid-20s, mid to upper 20s to start. The frost line went all the way down to frost-proof Florida, but at least it's a quieter weather picture across much of the southeastern states. A couple of sprinkles and snowflakes from the Ohio back into parts of the southern plains as the week wears on.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Folks, the calendar may say winter, but growing season 2026 will be here before we know it. In fact, this might be the best time to begin getting those preparations in place so you can have a truly successful 2026 growing season. To that end, I'm joined this morning by Hunter Bowman. He's a market development specialist with Corteva out of the Delta region. And Hunter, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for having me.
So now when we say you cover the Delta region, give us the rundown. What states are you working in, Hunter?
So I actually cover the Boot Hill, Missouri, West Tennessee, all of Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, and most of Texas.
All right, that is a big territory. You're putting a lot of miles on that truck each year, aren't you, talking to farmers?
We cover a lot of miles in a year, looking at a lot of different stuff. Very wide variety of things going on in that area.
Absolutely. So with that being the case, what do you see across your territory as things farmers are doing right now to set themselves up for success?
So, there's two big things going on right now. It's no secret that it's going to be a tough year for agriculture. But two things that can really help us get ready going into the year is making sure that our equipment's ready so that we get the most out of the products that we're putting through that equipment. Making sure our spray rigs are clean and making sure that our nozzles are working properly so that we're getting the most out of the money that's coming through there. Getting the best coverage is really going to be key to, cutting down on cost and making sure that we do things right the first time. And that we're getting the best benefit out of our dollar.
And to that extent, in order to figure out if we're getting the best benefit for our dollar, we've got to start planning ahead. Do you encourage guys to put together lists of preferred crop protection chemistries they'd like to be using this year and to start finding them?
So I think it's very beneficial, if you have a game plan going into the year. So kind of planning, what seed are we going to plant, what variety are we going to use, and then what herbicides, insecticides, fungicides do we plan to use throughout the year. Given on, weather patterns and pests that might move in, pathogens or diseases that we might encounter, that might change a little bit. So give yourself a little wiggle room with a few different options. But overall, if we've got a game plan going into the year, we can really cut down on those costs with the exception of whether or not we have to make a change here or there. It's a lot easier to change that plan once we already have it in place as it is to try to figure it out after we've done it. Like, did this work or not?
Now, of course, across your territory, there are a sizable number of growers producing cotton. For those who are considering the Enlist cotton genetics for this season, what would you tell them? What's the advantage that Enlist can bring to a cotton grower's field?
I think the biggest advantage that we have with Enlist is just the ease of using the product. If you look at Enlist, we've got very few restrictions on how the product can be applied, how we use it. We've got a wide application window. We've also got a wide array of nozzles that you can use. And with that wide array of nozzles, it's going to allow you to use nozzles that are going to give you better coverage, more likely to hit our target, more likely to control weeds, which is in turn going to reduce the number of applications that you've got to make for weed control and save you money in the long run.
Now, you mentioned that wide application window. How long is Enlist effective for?
So you can actually apply Enlist all the way up until pre-emergence, so pre-plant, all the way until that first white bloom flower on that plant. So pretty late into the reproductive summer season.
And you've had growers over the past couple of years using Enlist cottonseed, haven't you?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of growers switch to Enlist here lately, just because once they try it and they see the benefits and the ease of how easy it is to use the product, once they see that they don't have to worry as much due to the product having low volatility. It's also got Colex-D technology factored in. So what that is it's a drift aid that's going to reduce that drift potential that you have with the product. So you don't have to worry as much about wind carrying that product off or, fine droplets moving to an off-target site and causing injury to other crops around you.
That makes sense. And when would you start to use that for getting the fields clean? When would you start to roll out, get tractors moving down there across the Delta?
For us, we'll start as early April planting cotton, and we'll go all the way into June, depending on the weather that we have. If we turn off and have a nice spring, we can plant the Delta in about 2 weeks. It's amazing what growers can do these days with the equipment that they have and how large things have gotten, and just the amount of ground that they're able to cover in a day. It's amazing the organization that they brought to agriculture and the way that these guys can do things on such a large scale in such a short amount of time.
It really is incredible what these high-speed planters can get done. Now, of course, not every grower in your territory is going to be putting cottonseed in the ground. You're also going to have a number of soybean producers down there. Enlist E3 soybeans, is that a good choice for the 2026 season?
So Enlist 3 soybeans were another one that kind of took off for us in the Delta last year. And one of the great things that happened with those soybeans was the yield that we saw. A lot of the growers that gave them a chance were amazed by the yields that they were able to get at the end of the year. And that's kind of driven them into this year. They're growing even more Enlist soybeans. So Enlist soybeans continue to grow for us. Same benefits that you would see in cotton with the ease of applying the herbicide, the wide range of things that we're able to tank mix with Enlist to get us good weed control, cut down on those applications so that we can get that good weed control early out of fewer applications, and then also back it up with yield.
Hunter, if we've got viewers they want to learn more about Enlist cotton or E3 soybeans, where would you send them for that most up-to-date information?
Yeah, absolutely. So enlist.com is going to give you a wide range of things that you can look at. It's going to list out all those benefits. There's a ton of helpful videos on there. If that's something you're into and you want to look at that. Just to really lay out the program for you, describe all the benefits, and tell you how you can make the Enlist system work for you on your farm.
Hunter Bowman, Market Development Specialist with Corteva, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Pioneer. 100 starts with 1.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Soybean farmers recently gathered in Orlando for the annual Clean Fuels Conference put on by the Clean Fuels Alliance America. It was a turbulent year for the industry, but there were still plenty of things to look forward to. Heather Buchter, Director of Communications, joins us now.
The word I think that I would use to describe this conference was optimistic, which was great to see because, like you mentioned, it has kind of been a turbulent year for the clean fuels industry and the agricultural industries as well. But there was a real sense that we're kind of turning that corner and really ready to move biodiesel and renewable diesel into high gear. We were hoping to have a few more federal policy updates to share with our audience. Unfortunately, we're still kind of in that waiting game, waiting for the EPA to finalize the renewable volume obligation numbers. They did propose robust numbers for 2026. So we see that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that we're set up for success in 2026, but still waiting on the final ruling on that, along with the final ruling of 45Z. So we're anticipating some of that coming soon and looking forward to getting this industry up and running again. We did explore a lot of the federal policy outcomes and also state outcomes as well in many of our breakout sessions at the conference.
Even though we've had a pause on a lot of federal policies, as you mentioned, states are moving ahead. They're moving this ball down the field. New Mexico recently celebrated some new policy that could have a significant impact on demand, Heather, for both biodiesel and renewable diesel. Talk us through what's changed there for farmers and producers.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big deal. New Mexico really does play a critical role in moving the feedstocks and fuels that are produced in the Midwest all the way over to the West Coast as well, to markets there. The rule really opens the door for major new markets for biofuels. The state really does consume about 800 million gallons of diesel each year. So that demand increasingly being met by biodiesel and renewable diesel is just really exciting, not only for the fuel producers, but also for the soybean farmers as well in the Midwest, because it strengthens that demand for the primary feedstock of these fuels, which is soybean oil.
And it's not just states, of course. We're seeing private companies also move the ball down the field. You had the chance at the conference to celebrate a few of those leaders in the world of biodiesel use. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
This year, we honored John Deere and R.W. Beckett with Clean Fuels Awards. So John Deere received our initiative award for implementing B30, approving that, which is a 30% biodiesel blend across all their Tier 4 engines. And that's really a meaningful step for farmers who actually want to use the higher blends of renewable fuel in their operations, but it also helps reduce carbon emissions while keeping dollars circulating in rural economies as well. So we always are happy to see these companies taking their own initiative. So R.W. Beckett, they're based, I believe, in Massachusetts, where many homes still rely on heating oil to heat their homes in the winter. And they actually they developed and pushed out a UL-listed burner that can run on 100% biodiesel or 100% renewable diesel. So that means that people in the Northeast, they can transition their homes to renewable fuel and not wait for any other transitions to happen. It's cost effective, and they can make that switch today thanks to these burners that can run up to B100. And it's approved with the warranty too. So it's just really exciting to celebrate those wins.
Thanks, Heather. And if you'd like to learn more about the clean fuels industry, visit their website, cleanfuels.org.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Well, Greg's back with a look at the precipitation to come next week. And Greg, is anybody due to get a lot of it?
Not a lot of it, more normalized setup here. No winter storms, thank goodness. We've had too much of that across, especially the eastern states. So this latest winter storm winding its way into the northeast of New England after laying out some snow across the mid-Atlantic region. But look at it as drought relief, whether it came down in the white stuff or not. With time, we'll get a little moisture to fill on in across areas of the eastern through southern Corn Belt, parts of the Plain States as well. Big story probably is the lack of anything going on in the southwestern mountains, central and southern Sierra. Maybe late in the week and towards the weekend, a fair covering of moisture shower activity in the Pacific Northwest. In fact, that's the trade-off of La Nina, a drier weather pattern typically as you go through the winter season across the Southwest.
What are you seeing temperature-wise for the week of February 9th while we're at the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville?
Well, no barbaric cold. They were down at and below zero. And, of course, heavy snow in that area. You might still see some of the leftover snow piles from clearing it off into parts of the I-70 and Ohio River corridor. So a little below average here. Readings back to normal across the western Corn Belt. Still some very mild environments for outdoor work. Livestock operations, cleanup and recovery still from these areas across this part of the country here from the recent spat of winter storm it is. And we'll continue with with a drier trend there across the Delta and Gulf Coast areas. A little more of an active weather pattern for the upper Midwest, the Northeast, and New England. Normal moisture we hope for the Pacific Northwest, but a wide area from the Sierra into the central and southeastern plains. High and dry moisture expected as the week wears on.
Cold temperatures make a return for the week of February 16th?
Yeah, I could have easily brought this cold air even farther south. This is sort of a middle ground approach here, but some of our longer range stuff still thinking that we're going to be even colder than this. But here it is, stratospheric warming. So when you unload the Arctic air, it spills on southward. This is the story here. We've squashed the ridge over the southwestern part of the country, and it gets a little gnarly into the Pacific Northwest. That's good news into the Canadian prairie and a fair amount of winter storminess, and that will include snow and ice across much of the Corn Belt into the Northeast and New England.
How about as we get into March?
Here we go into March, and I could have easily brought this farther south. We'll take the middle ground here with cold and bitter cold to the north. Meanwhile, an active storm track for the northern Rockies, much of the plains, plenty of winter storminess yet to go, despite meteorological spring across much of the Corn Belt.
Our Farm Progress Update is brought to you by Grinnell Mutual. Farming is complicated. Our comprehensive policies make it simpler. Protect your tomorrow from the unexpected with Grinnell Mutual. And this week, we're checking in with Feedstuffs editor Sarah Muirhead. She's been down in Atlanta at the International Production and Processing Expo. Sarah, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Now, of course, this is the largest gathering of technology and equipment for poultry producers. What has been a hot topic of conversation down there?
A couple hot topics. One is the whole change in protein, a lot of emphasis on protein. We've seen that not only from USDA inverting that pyramid and putting the protein on the top. So that's caused the poultry industry. I mean, they're very excited about that because poultry is really set for a lot of growth here in the coming years. We've talked a lot about sustainability. We're talking a lot, of course, about high path avian influenza as well. So lots of discussions, new technology, new feeding, management, all kinds of new things that they're talking about.
Sarah, you mentioned that HPA, high path avian influenza. We've seen a resurgence of that so far this year. Is the industry focused on biosecurity at the farm level? Is that the sort of technology and equipment you see?
Yeah, that and how we might be able to do things from a feeding, a nutrition standpoint as well as technology at the farm, and just general emphasis on good biosecurity in the barns.
All right. And then, of course, on that protein demand topic, the corollary issue to that are these weight loss drugs. Sarah, these GLP-1 medications. How does the poultry industry view that change in America's diets? Is that a win for the industry?
We've had a couple discussions here, and I want to say, yes, it's a win because there's more attention to protein. A couple things that have come out this week that have been very interesting is these drugs also have people eating smaller portions. So is it really a gain? Certainly not a negative, but are we really moving that protein needle forward? The other thing is that there's so many people now that are going out and looking for high protein in other kinds of products. I mean, you can get high protein in your cereals, in other things, but are we really doing a good job of emphasizing the protein content in our animal proteins, in our meat, milk, and eggs?
That is going to be a big question. We'll be answering over.
Making it really clear for consumers so they know that, hey, this is more of a natural protein and probably a better source for you.
Absolutely. And of course, you've been bringing conversations from the trade show floor all week on the Feedstuffs 365 platform. Sarah, tell our audience where they can go to catch up on those videos and that content.
Feedstuffs.com. Just go to our website, Feedstuffs 365. You can find it on our homepage. You can look at our social media channels. We're pushing it out there. Interviews from here, and then we'll be sharing podcasts and other longer segments in the coming weeks.
And of course, you'll be at other shows, including the National Cattlemen's Beef Association CattleCon next week. Sarah, we look forward to seeing you in person at that event.
We'll see you there, Mike. Thank you.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. This weekend at the Tractor Shed, it's a little bit different. I'm looking forward to a weekend in March that some of you into the old tractors will want to keep in mind. Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Ag Spray Equipment, a leader in liquid application equipment and parts, and the home of the DT Series trailer. From turnkey solutions to field-proven performance, They help maximize your spraying operation. Learn more at agspray.com. Well, that third weekend in March, there'll be two competing events, the Gathering of the Green and the IH Collectors Winter Convention. They'll be about 800 miles apart. Chances are you wouldn't want to try to attend both of them anyway. I know how many of you are. But the Gathering of the Green will be taking place at Davenport, Iowa. And they'll have everything green there. Some interesting balers in the past and tractors. Ken Reese, our longtime friend who helped start the Gathering of the Green many years ago, will be on the program there this year, March 18th through the 21st. Then the IH Collectors Winter Convention will take place the same doggone weekend, Clemens, North Carolina. That's about 10 miles to the southwest of Winston-Salem, March 19th through the 21st. Yeah, last year in Texas, they had an LP 404. They had some graders and maintainers. NationalIHCollectors.com. That's the website to check out, nationalihcollectors.com. I'll be on the program there that Saturday night addressing the group in Clemens, North Carolina. Again, the website for the Gathering of the Green, gatheringofthegreen.com. Mark Stock is here now. He gathers them all together for sale.
Well, hello, Max. February 3rd, we have real estate selling in Kansas. 355 acres of Barton and Rice County, Kansas will sell in 3 tracts for Leon D. Hoffman, the land located by Hoisington, Kansas. There's also land selling in Van Buren County, Iowa, and on February the 4th, Bureau County, Illinois, and Lucas County, Iowa. On Thursday, February 5th, Marshall County, Illinois, Platte County, Nebraska, and Summer County, Kansas. And if you're looking for some breeding bulls, Thursday, February the 5th is the Kamek Farms Angus Bull Sale. 26 powerful, performance-driven Black Angus bulls will sell. Plus, a great lineup of ag equipment will sell this week. On Wednesday, February the 4th, the Rusty Renth Retirement Sale by Mascoutah, Illinois will feature 32 items, a Gleaner R65 Combine, an AGCO RT 155A mechanical front tractor, an AGCO DT 180A mechanical front tractor. There's a 1971 Alice Chalmers 185 tractor, plus a Case IH 7140 mechanical front. Another quality lineup of farm machinery. Also on Thursday, the Dave and Connie Thompson Retirement Sale by Monticello, Illinois features a John Deere 9670 Combine, John Deere 9460R four-wheel drive tractor, John Deere 8260R mechanical front tractor. There's a white 140 tractor. This is well cared for, extra clean equipment.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Gehringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Gehringoff.com. Gehringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know Kiara Fudge. She's serving as the Michigan State FFA Vice President at Large this year. And Kiara, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, tell us a little bit about your background. Did you grow up on a farm or in the countryside?
Actually, kind of neither. I grew up in a small college town, so I was basically on a college campus all my life. I got into FFA and got into agriculture through FFA when I was in about 7th grade.
And what was it about FFA that you found appealing?
Honestly, at first it was just because my friends were joining, so I wanted to do something with them. But then I stayed because I saw how much it was changing people through personal growth, career development, and I even got the opportunity to show dairy feeders through my school's FFA barn.
Lots of new experiences in FFA, and I understand you also coached some FFA teams and have served in leadership. What is it about leading in the FFA that you find appealing?
For me, it's just seeing how much it changes people's lives. So when I started FFA, I was, again, in 7th grade, and I was just a shy kid. And then I saw how little by little, especially with the contest teams that I've judged, people would grow and be able to become more themselves and be able to come out of their shells. So that's how I got into the leadership positions that I got into.
We all need that, coming out of our shelves, feeling more confident with our peers. That is a fantastic value that FFA provides students across the country. Kiara Fudge, thank you so much for talking to us, and we wish you the best of luck as Michigan State FFA Vice President at Large this year.
Thank you so much.
Chad Colby's Tech segment is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. The days may be getting longer, but it's still plenty dark in farm country, and Chad Colby joins us this week with a piece of technology that might make those days a little easier.
There's no question you can never have enough light. If you followed our tech segment, we've always shown you some pretty cool lights. Here's a few here from Milwaukee many of you have seen in the past. I especially like this one. So easy. Turn it on, throw it on your neck, and you've got a lot of good light right around you as you walk. But this one here is my all-time favorite. It uses an M18 battery. You can charge your phone. I actually have another one that will allow you to charge other items as well. Got a really super bright light. But on this week's tech segment, I'm going to show you something you probably haven't seen before. Company's called Dex, and they have a light called the Finger Light. And I saw this on YouTube, and I was intrigued by it because simply I wasn't 100% sure the application. But as I did a little more research, it's not very expensive. It's around $40 or so. Obviously, there's some shipping in there. But when I looked more into it, I was intrigued, and I liked how it mounted to you. It's got a copper band, so it'll fit over your finger regardless of the size, whether you have a glove on or not, which is pretty interesting. And it's got 3 different modes of light. It's got high, low, and a green stealth, which is very nice if you hunt or fly an airplane or anything like that. USB rechargeable, lasts for 2.5 hours. It's got a battery indicator, and of course, you would expect that it is waterproof. Well, when I got this, I was trying to find an application that I could share here on the tech segment. So I turned all the lights off in the basement, and I put the finger light on and went down and checked the electrical panel. And this was pretty slick. And I like the fact that it's where my finger is going. And I can't think of all the applications on your farm and ranch where that might be handy when you're in a delicate place, especially with spring right around the corner. I know this. I liked it so much, I'm going to order a couple more. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. That might be just what we need on some of these cold, dark winter evenings. Folks, don't go away. When we come back, we'll take a look at Pioneer's 100th anniversary celebration. Brandon Walter, the U.S. marketing lead for Pioneer, has been out on the road talking to growers after they've wrapped up this season. I had the chance to speak with him recently, and I asked just how Pioneer genetics performed in the field in 2025.
Yeah, Mike, it was another great year for Pioneer with really great performance that we see across the U.S. with our products. Obviously, not only in our newest genetics, but also bringing forward some of our new traits forward, like Vorceed Enlist and PowerCore Enlist. And so a good example of that is if you look at the top 40 products that we plan to sell here in 2026 to our customers, we saw almost a 7+ bushel yield advantage across over 24,000 comparisons. So while the yield is really impressive, Mike, I always say the comparisons are probably even more impressive because ultimately we know that farmers are looking to plant products that they can have confidence in that are going to perform well in their field. And the fact that we've been able to have over 24,000 different comparisons of testing these products, it really helps us create confidence in making sure that we're putting the right products on the right acre for our farmers in 2026.
Let's talk a little bit about the yield contest. I know a lot of Pioneer growers throw in on that. What did we see this year?
Yeah, so again, another great year as we think about partnering closely with the NCGA, the National Corn Growers Yield Contest in 25. So we saw 13 national winners across all the different classes that are represented, including the highest yield of the entire contest with a yield of 572.3 bushels per acre. So pretty impressive with one of our new products, P18216, which is one of our new trait platforms in that PowerCore Ultra Enlist.
And of course, as they look out to 2026, since it is the 100th year of Pioneer, you got some very exciting incentives going on. Talk about the Golden Seed incentive, Brandon.
It's going to be a great year in 2026 here, celebrating 100 years as a company with Pioneer. Not many companies can say that anymore of making it 100 years. So we know that we got to go out with a bang and make sure that our customers feel that excitement that we're having, not only as employees, but also for the farmers that have helped us get to where we are today. And so one of the exciting things that we're going to have is this Golden Seed incentive that really is a play off of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So we're kind of taking a unique factor of that. As you know, in the movie, they open up the chocolate bar, they find the golden ticket, and they get that opportunity to go to the Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. Well, in this case, farmers are going to open up their seed bag or their Pro Box in 2026 and potentially see gold treated seed. And so if you see gold treated seed, no, it's not a problem. It's actually, hey, congratulations, you're one of our up to 13 winners that we'll have across the U.S. And so the plan will be, Mike, is with those winners that find that golden seed in 2026 during planting season, we're actually going to take them in the winter of 27 to Johnston to be able to go see behind the scenes of all that goes in to create our corn hybrids that they plant today, but then also have a warm trip to Hawaii as well to go see one of our parent research facilities there to see again some more behind the scenes.
And of course, that's not the only way Pioneer is celebrating 100 years in business. Tell us, where can we go to see what else is happening this year for Pioneer?
One of those big ways is what we are calling our Century of Innovation plots that we're going to have around the U.S. We're going to have over 30 different locations of kind of looking back all the way from our first hybrid in Copper Cross all the way to some of our newest exciting genetics and kind of showing some of the different stories of the plant breeding that went behind the scenes to get us to where we are today. So those will be, that information will be coming out later on to customers near you.
And Brandon, real quick, what is that website for the 100-year celebration?
Yeah, so if farmers want to learn more about the Pioneer history of 100 years or any of those ways that they can interact with our teams here this summer, they can go to pioneer.com/100.
Well, February is meeting month in the world of agriculture, and we'll be on the road. You can find This Week in Agribusiness at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association in Nashville next week and at the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville. Be sure to wave at us if you see us there, and be sure to join us next week right here for This Week in Agribusiness. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studio. Family owned since 1948 and trusted by pros worldwide, Strauss makes gear that works as hard as you do. Tough, functional, and resilient. This isn't just workwear, it's gear engineered to perform. Gear up now at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.